The public meeting for September 16th, 2020, we're reconvening, and at this time I'd like to call back to order the public hearing for bylaw number 20-18. And I believe I'd like to ask if administration is present to make some statements.
Yes, we are.
Good evening, Chuck.
Thank you, Council and your worship. Just a quick one tonight from me. Administration has decided not to pursue bylaw 20-18 at this time. Staff will return to Council with a revised consolidated low-density land use district at a later date. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Chuck, for that. And at this time, I'd like to close the public hearing. And then we can move on to the confirmation of agenda for this regular meeting for September 16th. And at this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councilors tonight? Any items that need to go on? I have one 14.1 question concerning councilor residency. Questions? And is there anything from administration tonight? Oh, Councilor Sobel?
Sorry, I don't have a light, Your Worship. I just have one item under 10.1 committees.
That'll both be under reports from councilors, that one? Okay.
Committee reports.
Committee reports, okay, thank you. Anything from administration, Deborah?
Your Worship, just for the public hearing, if we could get a motion.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay. Could I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I so move, Your Worship.
We have a motion from Councilor Sobel. You've all heard the motion, all in favor? And that motion is carried, the public hearing is closed. Thank you for that, Deborah. And if there are there any items from administration? Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are no other items.
Thank you very much. Then I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Corbio?
I move to confirm the agenda as amended.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And I believe we've done the in-camera section already. We have no presentations or recognitions tonight. I believe we have no delegations. We have no consent agenda. So this brings us to item 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, the adoption of the July 22nd, 2020 regular council meeting minutes.
I will move the July 22nd meeting minutes as presented.
Did you have a comment on those minutes, Councillor Cox? Yes. Okay.
There's a new copy on your auditor's and our desk of minutes.
September 2nd.
Okay, are you still looking, or are you?
Yeah, go ahead. It's fine. It was not a big deal.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the July 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes from Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. 7.2, adoption of the September 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Peterson?
Oh, never mind.
July 8th. Is it not July 8th?
I have September 2nd in front of me.
Okay, disregard.
I just chose the meeting, Your Worship. I shouldn't be for that.
Oh, okay, so could we get a, Councillor Peterson, Councillor Montgomery?
I will move that council adopt the September 2nd regular council meeting minutes as presented in the second copy here.
Thank you for that motion, and you've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Item 8, we have no tabled items, so that brings us to item 9, items and reports from administration. 9.1, TD Green Space Planting Grant Budget Requirements, which is found on page 24. And Donna, welcome. You're speaking on this item. Welcome this evening.
Good evening, hello. Sorry, caught my earrings. Okay, so I was here last week and brought forward the TD Green Space Planting Grant information. Council requested some budget requirement information, which I've provided in this report. As you're aware, the town of Strathmore was awarded the TD Green Space Planting Grant through the Arbor Day Foundation. We received 22,865 Canadian dollars to plant 150 larger sized trees, which is basically bigger than a seedling. The grant is for $24,400, but the funds were allocated in US dollars, and due to the exchange rate, we received a slightly less amount. So this is information to update you on the budget requirements. Budget requirements for 2020. So all assumptions are based on if we plant the trees by the end of September, beginning of October, which is approximately 4 weeks of maintenance. To establish a new tree in an urban setting, 5 years of maintenance is strongly recommended. And below is a breakdown of the tasks required to plant the trees and the costs associated with each task. The original application did state that we would plant 1-inch caliper trees. We're recommending 2-inch caliper just because the water requirements are less for 2-inch. If we plant 1-inch calipers, we have to water them every 2 to 3 days. So the site prep includes 1 skid steer with an auger and an operator at 15 minutes per hole. This is approximately $14.46 per tree. Planting is based on 3 trucks with all the materials needed, the salt, the soil, the mulch, the staking materials, and that is site dependent. If we went forward with Strathmore Lakes, it's very windy there, that's where the staking would be required. This is approximately 1 hour per tree. The tasks include assisting the volunteers with tree placement in the hole, adding the soil, creating the tree well, adding mulch, and staking the tree. The cost to do this task is approximately $182.28 per tree. This does not include the staking materials, as that is, as I mentioned, site dependent. And each site, we are planning to put 50 trees at each site. And the cost of the staking materials is $24 approximately. We do get a discount on the staking materials. Generally, that's around $50 per kit. We get it for about the $24. The watering includes 1 water truck and an operator at 15 minutes per tree. The water is required weekly, as I mentioned, because we'll be planting the 2-inch caliper trees. This is approximately $19.76 per week. So this includes, as I mentioned, the operator and the water truck. We'll also place a gator bag around each tree, which slowly releases the water into the well and allows for better absorption into the root system. The gator bags are a one-time purchase at $16.50 per gator bag. And mentioned in here as well is that we actually don't pay for water, but if we did, it would be at $5.25 per cubic meter. We fertilize usually twice per year, spring and fall. We would definitely apply a rooting hormone to these trees as that helps establish the root zone. And that costs about $5 per tree. And pruning, we do a light pruning, which is every 5 years, or at least once every 5 years. This just helps establish the canopy, the lower canopy, do a little bit of cleaning and that sort of thing, but it's a very light pruning. That's about 15 minutes per tree, and that's something that my specialized horticulturist would do. So the town of Strathmore received the $22,865 for the grant, and this can be used for purchase of trees as well as maintenance. Operations receives $15,000 in our annual budget for tree planting and replacements. However, we also have funds available in other purchases and landscaping materials that can be put towards this incentive. At this point, we would be able to commit to allocating approximately $27,000 towards this incentive this year. So that covers the maintenance costs for this year. With the grant funds in the town's annual tree planting budget, plus the additional commitments, there's a total of $64,865 available for 2020. And then the last page does include the breakdown of the cost and all the things that we do. However, going forward for 2021 and 2024, the budget requirements going forward would be for maintenance of the trees for the next 4 years. Each year, we would require $493.70 per tree. This includes the watering, fertilizing, and pruning. Watering, as I mentioned, required once per week, so for a total of 24 weeks. And each year, we would require $74,055 for the maintenance of the 150 trees. If we don't get those funds, this means that we might not be able to do some of our other projects that we do, which could include not planting flowers, maybe not planting any more additional trees, and not being able to obtain all of our specialized contracted services, such as arborist and irrigation technicians. And so we're looking for direction on which way we would like to go.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Donna. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report, Donna.
You're
I had a few questions, or
Okay.
a handful of questions. So in the estimate, like when you're estimating, like, say, the watering of the trees, like, and it's, 15 minutes per tree at, sorry, I can't remember the amount. Well, so like the total hourly amount works up to $79.04, and the operator, as I understand, is, about $29 of that. And so as part of the estimate, like, you're including $50 per hour for the truck, is that right?
So, yes, so basically what we own the truck, but this is an operating cost of the truck.
So like, we'd be spending that on fuel?
That includes fuel. So that's just the regular operation of the truck. So whatever maintenance is required, like for us to operate the truck, that's
Yeah.
what the cost is. So for us to turn on the engine, that's what it costs for us to move that truck for that 15 minutes or an hour as.
Okay, so we're spending $50 an hour just to have a
Yeah.
truck running?
Yeah, and this is based on, there's market research that we went through, and this is all based in our City Works program. So all these numbers are the actual operating cost of the truck. And all the equipment that I mentioned here, this is the operating cost of it all.
Okay, that's good to know.
That also, like, just if you take into consideration also insurance, like everything that goes into that truck.
Right. I think there's got to be some cost that would be, whether the truck's sitting there or not would be a factor, I guess. So if we're, like we're paying insurance, for instance, regardless.
Exactly, yes. And there's pumps that are on water trucks, and that sort of factors into it as well.
Okay. And like, I guess, what is the cost per hour for the truck when it's not being used?
That's a good question. I actually don't know that.
Okay.
I
Because
can
I guess,
find out
like,
for
I guess
you.
the actual cost would be the difference between those two things, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the other question I have, or one other, is that just with regards to the hole drilling, so
Mm-hmm.
we have a 12-inch drill bit. Have we looked at getting a bigger bit if we're using?
Yes, so we have looked into a bigger bit. I called some rental companies. However, Cody from Tree to Tree Nursery has offered to lend us a larger bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said, just don't damage it. If you damage it, you got to pay for it. But he did offer to lend it at no cost.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that should save us a few minutes, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And so the other thing I was wondering is, like, so this is intended to be like a one-day planting event, right?
Yes, so there's a few things in there. Okay. I called the Arbor Day Foundation. I just referred to my notes of the conversation with them. So I would like it to be a one-day event. That's if we get enough volunteers. The Arbor Day Foundation did tell me that they are struggling getting enough volunteers out for these programs right now. The TD Bank has told us that they will not be participating in the event just because of COVID at this point in time. So one thing how I would like to do it is do it in one-day event, and then we would just move our volunteers with my staff. We did consider breaking it up into like having one staff member here, one here, but trying to manage 25 volunteers with one person is a little bit difficult. Volunteers do an excellent job, but we got to make sure that they plant these trees correctly. They are larger caliper trees, so the plan would be, we do a lot of the prep work ahead of time. We would obviously drill the holes, we would place the dirt and the mulch beside it, we would cut the burlap and the wiring beforehand, get everything ready. But we do need to make sure that they place the trees in the holes properly, because if they don't, then we have to go back and fix everything after.
Okay.
So it would be a one-day event, hopefully, if we get enough people.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, like, it's like 100, if you're saying 150 hours, right?
Yeah, and it does take, like, that takes into factor all the prep work that goes in, like, beforehand, calling in the locates and
Yeah.
measuring out the sites and marking where the trees are gonna go and making sure we give enough room for the tree to actually grow to its maximum potential and, getting all the materials, picking them up and getting them to the site. So that factored all of that into that time.
Yeah, okay. And so I guess another question I have is, like, since you've talked to the TD people, so initially when I applied for the grant, it was using the Center Street Park as the
Yes,
site.
yeah.
And so have they given confirmation that we can go to a different site?
Yes, they have. Yeah,
Okay.
they did. Yeah. They were leery on the Strathmore Lakes site, and they did ask me if I would look into a different site, which I told them I would look into, and then I will update you guys once we decide where we want to go with
Okay,
the
great.
third site.
Okay.
But yes, they like the other two sites.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, and I guess the last question I just have is just with regards to, like some of that prep work, like in order to kind of like, keep costs to a minimal, would you be willing to let, like, say, like myself or other, like, let's say, like volunteers kind of help with that part?
As much as possible, as long as it's safe for
Yeah.
people to do that, absolutely.
Okay.
But a lot of the prep work, like locates and things like that, like I would prefer if we do that, it's a lot of organizing. We're the prime contractor of that site, so we would need to do some of those things.
Yeah.
But if you want to come cut wires and burlap and help us place trees, absolutely.
Okay,
It would just be also the amount of tools that we would need to make sure that people could do all that. Cutting the wires requires bolt cutters to do it. So I don't have 150 pairs of bolt cutters for a whole bunch of people to do that.
okay.
I don't even have 75, I've got 2.
Okay, and yeah, and if council chooses to move forward, then I would certainly help as much as
Excellent.
you'd let me, so.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay, and yeah, I guess, thank you very much for your work on this.
No problem, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for your thoroughness and efficiency as always.
Thank you.
It's amazing. The questions that I have relate to the final paragraph prior to the conclusion, and I am very in favor of doing the tree planting and going ahead with it, but my concerns are what you, I think, clearly identify as the unknowables, and that is with regards to arborist contracts and planting flowers in the
Yeah.
future. That's a real concern for this community. If
I agree.
suddenly we can't afford to plant flowers in the downtown, and that's what you're speaking about.
It would take a lot of my budget, that $74,000 would take a lot of my budget away from the things that we do on a regular basis.
And so the other thing that really concerns me, when you talk about arborists and possibly not being able to afford arborists, those are the ones that we use to deal with disease
Well,
particularly.
we do a lot of, anything that we can do from the ground, we
Yeah.
do. So any pruning, we made really good progress last year prior to COVID. We were pruning like crazy. We were getting canopies raised. We've been removing a lot of the dead trees that we can remove. The arborists we use for anything that's too large for us to take down. So they have a bucket
Right.
truck is
Right.
basically what it comes down to. And then they'll piece down trees that are too big for us to fall onto a road or whichever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are emergent, and then,
Yeah.
so your group, or your operations are looking after the disease factor?
Yes,
Your-
as much
your
as we can reach,
capacity to
absolutely.
do that.
Yes, that's exactly
good.
right.
And so that is a concern. So then, because we're not in budget yet, and we know that it's going to be extraordinarily
Mm-hmm.
tight this year, this is a big concern that you've identified.
Yeah.
and we don't know where that is. And,
Not
and
yet,
we're in a
no.
bit of a bind because we can't wait either.
Right.
So it's balancing off, maybe not having flowers in the downtown next year, or having trees.
I would also maybe recommend, another thing we could also consider is we could ask the Arbor Foundation to push it into next year. And we could
And
see
then
how
we
our
would know
budget goes.
from a
and-
budget perspective.
Yeah, we could see how our budget goes this year, what decisions are made, and then request from the Arbor Foundation to move it into the following year to do the actual planting.
From a personal perspective, from a health perspective in community, I'd much rather have 150 trees than flowers. But I also know that we've gone to tremendous lengths to improve the downtown, and it would be a blow. And so it's a dilemma. For my part, if we could delay it, if the Arborist Foundation would allow us to delay for a year, I would be ecstatic, because then we could hammer it out in budget, and you would have knowables and we would have knowables.
Yes, correct.
Going forward.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson, do you want to weigh in on that?
Just, yes, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Is this on? I think, Donna, that the cost is for the next 3 or 4 years?
For
It's
4
not
years.
just-
It's not just, yeah, it's for 4 years, correct.
So, putting flowers and doing all those things would not just be 1 year?
she's
Okay.
on that, 21, 24.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Corbeil and then Councillor Sobel.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Worship. I have one, maybe I shouldn't say solution, but we've always talked about like adopting a flower bed and stuff like that. Like that could help alleviate some of the burden for some of the maybe missing flowers that we potentially could have. But yeah, and they are able to. I'm not opposed to prolonging either. Actually, if we'd have more time, maybe through COVID, we might even have more volunteers.
Yes.
Would that be your suggestion? Like, would that be your preference?
At this point, yes. To be honest, I'm worried that with COVID, that we aren't going to get the volunteers that we need to do this, and that'll all fall onto operations to plant the trees.
Absolutely.
I am a little bit concerned about it. Also, I'm not against an Adopt a Park program.
Thank you very much.
Donna, have you broached the subject with the grant program as far as a delay to 2021? Have you?
We discussed it a little bit, yeah.
And how were they? Were they amenable to that?
Yeah, they were receptive to that. They understand, like, even the fact that the TD, who is the provider of this grant, can't even participate in it. And this is direction from their people above, right? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Did you need to go first? Your Worship, I just wanted to know how Councillor Montgomery felt about the delay. I mean, this was his hard work that got us this money, and I kind of want to know where you stand as far as this goes. Is that?
Thank you very much. Yeah, like I want this to be done properly and with like, you know, kind of proper planning and foresight, and so I certainly don't believe that we need to rush into it. And from my conversations with the TD people as well, like they did indicate that they would be fine with waiting until the spring due to the extenuating circumstances of COVID. So like, yeah, I want to do. I just want to make sure it's done properly, basically, if it's the right decision to do, and having, you know, being able to go through the budget process will certainly help with that. And to Councillor Corbeil's point, thank you for bringing that up. Adopting flower beds and boulevards and stuff like that has been one of my other pet projects, and so yeah, this hopefully can be a good kind of working combination. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. One last thing. With this grant application or process, when we were awarded, we were supposed to have an event with this as well. Is that kind of
Yes.
canceled right now?
It would be, we could do it if you can physically distance
Yeah.
with the amount of people that are allowed at the event, which is, I think, 50 right now. You can have at a gathering, so, yeah.
I didn't know if it was a requirement. That's
It
what I
is,
thought.
yeah.
It was a requirement that we were having to have. So,
It's an
you know,
event,
even if we
yeah.
did postpone, maybe we could actually have a proper event as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Corbeil. A question from me to our administration. Are you looking then for a motion that would talk about a potential delay until next year then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's the right approach. If
Okay.
someone can move that we request to delay the program to 2021.
Is anyone prepared to make that motion?
Yes, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson?
I would move that we postpone the tree granting, or TD green space planting until 2021, upon consideration of information that we receive from the granting program. I don't think there's anything more that we need to do with that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Everybody's clear on the motion? Then, seeing no questions or comments or concerns, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much for your thorough report, Donna.
Thank you.
And that brings us to item 9.2, the Curling Alberta Championship event update. And I believe we have Mark Pretzlaff tonight who's going to be presenting on that. Good evening, Mark.
Hello, Your Worship and Council. I'm here to provide a council with a brief update on the Curling Club's intention to host a Curling Alberta event in 2020. My report's been submitted to you, but if you wish me to make any presentation, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Mark. Councillors, do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Pretzlaff?
I have a comment, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson?
I just would like you to pass on thanks to the Curling Club for their judicious care of our Curling Club. They've done a great job, costs us very little money, and this shows how their oversight has been very, very good, and thank you too for yours.
I will.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer?
I'm prepared to make a motion, Your
Okay.
Worship. I move that council receive the report regarding the Curling Alberta Championship event update for information as presented.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mark. And that brings us now to item 9.3, the draft financial report to June 30th, 2020, which is found on page 29. Good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship Council. I'm here to present the Q2 update, the financial update. So we'll start with the balance sheet. The total of cash, temporary investments, and investments at June 30th, 2020 totaled $20.8 million and is higher than the $19.7 million at December 31st, 2019. We received our tax payments to the end of June, which bumped up our cash. We expect this balance to decrease throughout the year as we pay our operating and capital expenditures. Just as a side note on the Q1 update, we still at June 30th had not received the MSI and federal gas tax grants. However, we received both by September 15th. So that was $5.1 million. Yeah, which is great. Yeah. Taxes and grants in place of taxes receivable is significantly higher than December 2019. We are currently estimating that we are behind about $3 million in collections compared to June of 2019. Taxes are due October 31st. And we have noticed that our tip payments subsequent to the statement in the third quarter are almost at normal levels. So that's a good sign. Yep. Trade and other accounts receivables of $2.8 million is up $708,000 from the balance of $2 million at December 31st, 2019. The utility accounts receivable to the end of June increased by $231,000 as a result of the utility payment deferral. The remaining balance is from grant receivables, GST, and some others. Total financial assets of $26.7 million compared to $22.3 million at December 31st, 2019. Move on to the liabilities section. Our total liabilities are $33.4 million compared to $26.3 million at December 31st, 2019. The accounts payable in total have decreased by 1.1 million from 4.8 million at December 31st to 3.7 million at June 30th. Deferred revenue has increased by 3.1 million compared to December 2019. And this increase represents the amount of taxes that we collected for the future period of July through December. So when you pay your taxes at the end of June, you've paid for your first part of the year, and then we have money in deferred revenue for the second part of the year. Does that make sense? Yeah. Perfect. Our long-term debt increased from 19 million at December 31st, 2019 to 23.9 million, representing an increase in funding of about 5.4 million for the utility borrow completed in the first quarter of 2020, the additional town hall borrow, and the emergency operating borrow. Only 1.5 million of the 3 million was borrowed at the end of June. The remaining 1.5 million was borrowed in September. Do you have any questions on the balance sheet?
Councillor Peterson, did you?
I can wait till,
Okay, sure.
Councillor Montgomery.
I just have a question. Hi, Lisa. I just had a question about the consolidated statement of operations. So when you look at like the net property taxes, you know, and you look at to June of 2019, it says 6.16 million. And then for this year to June 30th, it says 6.4 for property taxes.
Yep.
But so we're short on property taxes this year compared to.
We're short on collections of property taxes, so where we normally are at. We're not short on our revenue. We will eventually receive those taxes. It's just a matter of time of when we're going to collect them. So we still recognize the revenue as we've earned it. So we technically have earned it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, I see.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was asking about. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so if we move on to the consolidated statement of operations. The operating revenue of 14.9 million is 49% of the total budgeted revenue for the year and is 5% higher than the same period in 2019. This is due to the increase in taxes and user fees and other revenue. Other revenue contains a one-time debt forgiveness of 290,000 for the Force Main overbuild in exchange for the Lakewood pedestrian bridge project. So that's why it's higher than budget. Penalties on taxes and utilities is down by 42%, which is expected. The town started charging penalties on utilities again in July, and taxes are due October 31st. So we're not charging penalties yet on them. Expenses, the total expenses to June 30th is 16.3 million and 48% of the budget compared to 17 million and 50% of the budget for the prior year. This is due to a decrease in spending due to the temporary layoffs and reduction in spending with the closure of our recreation facilities. It's mainly due to that. Do you have any questions on? It'll wait, okay. Next is our segmented reporting. It's just our breakdown by operational area. Schedule of property taxes. So this is our schedule. The schedule is based on 50% of the budgeted taxation and reflects the actual requisitions and payments made during the first half of 2020. Next is salary and wages. The total salaries and wages and benefits paid to June 30th was 6 million and represents 46% of the total budget of 13.2 million. In addition to that, the town has paid 443,000 towards operating consultants. These amounts were included in the operating department's budget on contracted services. The total budgeted salaries and benefits of 13.2 million is 31% of the town budget of 43 million. So the next schedule is the schedule of utilities. So we included this as we feel this is a key metric. The town's goal to achieve full costing of utilities is being met, and we just wanted to give you an update, include this as an update for every quarter from now on, so you can see where we're at.
Councilor Montgomery?
Thank you. So yeah, like one of our goals was to make the utilities kind of paying for themselves, plus putting some aside for reserves. But then this shows that we're still producing an excess over and above after we do that.
We're producing a small excess, yes, right now. It looks like we are. By the end of the year, we still have, like, you can see the note on the bottom, it says we still have principal repayments.
Yeah.
So we still have 8 million to come from there, but we're expecting a slight excess.
Okay. Thank you.
We also added the schedule of changes in accumulated surplus. Again, we feel this is a key metric. It's important to make sure that the town's accumulated surplus net of equity is above zero. So we want to start including this, and I believe with the budget, that we'll have some new goals for you on the statement.
Your worship?
Councilor Cox?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Can-
no worries.
Yeah, this was new to me, so
Yes.
I get it, I think. The line in which I want some clarification is the unrestricted funds designated for future use. It's been moved from unrestricted, or
Yes.
from
Unrestricted.
unrestricted to restricted.
Yes.
What's that for?
It's for the utility infrastructure. Remember, we were transferring into the reserve. It's for the MSI, and it's for the Lakewood. We wrote off the debt, and I pushed it up into financial stabilization reserve, and that's what I'm used to funding that bridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. The next schedule is a schedule of debt limits. So currently, we're sitting at 56% of our debt limit. Please note that for the total debt limit, we've used 2019 as an estimate. So currently we're over our designated 50% threshold, and this is due to funding utilities and our emergency spending. The next statement is the reserve continuity statement, and this statement shows the reserves at June 30th, 2020. The financial stabilization reserve shows activity that was contained in the budget or a budget amendment, and the total reserves decreased from 9.3 million at December 31st, 2019 to 8.9 million during the first half of 2020. And the final report is our capital spend and how we funded our projects for the first half of 2020. Any
Questions, Councilor Peterson?
So just a recap, so we're running a deficit right now, small deficit.
Yep.
That you expect is going to be, the council will work to fix it.
Yeah, no,
And so
and
that's
it's
the 3
timing
million.
too, right?
Timing.
Yeah.
And so this is due to a lot of the COVID tactics that were undertaken by the town to ease burdens and somewhat related to spending on both sides of the sheet.
Yeah, it's hard to say. So some of our expenses, we find that we're heavier in the fourth quarter during the year, but I know the staff has really made an effort to cut back on expenses and only do what's
And I
really
see that.
necessary.
And I guess one of the
yeah.
things leading to this, when I see this, what I see as being a relatively small deficit compared to what I expected.
Yes.
And also knowing that there might be some less than happy surprises come the last quarter. But still, it is better than what I expected. What isn't great is our reserve position. And so one of the questions that I have with regard to that is, because we have some, Councilor Montgomery pointed out that small surplus. Do you remember in the policy that when we were talking about that 3-year plan to fully index the reserves around utilities, that any surplus would also go into reserves? Is that in there, do you know?
Mel, do you know? Sorry, I'll ask Mel. He's our expert in that area.
We had some language in the long-term financial plan to that effect of putting surpluses into reserves, yes.
Yeah, good, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Thank you. And then the last comment that I wanted to make was that the 31% of total expenditure regarding staffing is significant, because it's significantly below, or 5% below average of other communities of our same size. And I know that some of that's due to COVID and to the cuts in that, but I also think that that shows the judiciousness of the community and what you're undertaking, and I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Councillor Cox. Sorry, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I echo Councillor Peterson's comments, and I did write down that taxes are due October 31st, so that will also help with that deficit,
Yes,
will
it
it
should.
not? And are we anticipating, and I think you've already covered this, but
Well, we're seeing our tips improve, so we're hoping that's a sign, but it's COVID, it's so hard to say. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cox. Any other questions or comments for Lisa? Seeing none, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
And that brings us to oh, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Sobel.
I move that, I don't have it here, I'm going to assume that it's council accept this report for information. I hope.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Now it brings us to 9.4, Strathmore Golf Club property tax exemption. Mr. Teedy, welcome back.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have with us Mr. Greg Lockheed from the Strathmore Golf Club. If we have some questions at the conclusion of this presentation. So the Strathmore Golf Club is a not-for-profit organization with a long and valued history in Strathmore. In the report, I've outlined some of the support from the town to the golf club over the years. In 2019, the golf club subdivided a parcel of land of almost 10 acres for future development. In the past years, the golf club has been paying the education and wheatland housing portion of property tax on the assessed values, none of which those taxes are retained by the town. For 2020, this amounts to $19,886 for the education and wheatland housing tax on all parcels except the subdivided parcel. For 2020, the total taxes on the subdivided parcel for municipal, education, and wheatland housing amounted to $8,828. Of this amount, $5,967, or 68%, was municipal, and the balance was education and wheatland housing. So the request is to formalize the arrangement we have with Strathmore Golf Club by bylaw and request administration to prepare a bylaw exempting the club from all property taxes and to cancel the 2020 property taxes.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Teedy, are there any other nonprofits in town that we exempt tax-wise?
None that I'm aware of.
Councillor Cox and then Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. T. I have a question. What are they planning to use this subdivided piece for? Like, is it going to be part of the golf course, or are they going to sell it?
We'd have to invite the golf club to answer that question.
Yes, when we started down this path, when we started down this path, we were looking at, for future opportunities. And the arrangement that we had when we went through with the planning and development officers in the town here, the way it is structured, that any future or potential purchaser of that parcel of land would still have to go through and do an area structure plan, apply with the town for a rezoning. So any future condition of sale or sale of that land would be condition of them going through the proper protocols with the town for area structure plan rezoning before it would even be able to be purchased.
So, but that is your plan, was to sell
If the
it?
opportunity arises down the road, yes.
But we weren't planning to improve the golf course or add buildings or anything like that? It was just
Not adding
literally
buildings. We are currently maintaining it. It is still part of the golf course. We still maintain it as the golf course. But it gives us the opportunity to sell down the road, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Lohi, for coming here today. I just have a couple questions for you. I'm new, and I didn't know that this was an existing agreement, so it was a little bit surprising to me. So would you please just lead me through kind of a
How it come to-
101, like how did this come about, and are you in the same position now that you were when you first came to council? Have things changed? Has your structure changed with regards to shareholders or anything like that in membership? Could you just give me a little bit of background, please?
Great question, because
Thank you.
we had to do some homework ourselves on it, because it actually did go back to 1982, I believe. And the way it's set up, to answer part of your question, nothing's changed in our structure, nothing's changed in our membership. What it was is that in the past, there's the parcels of land with the Strathmore Golf Course were commercial and municipal exempt on the tax side. And in the past, there would be a board member that would come and make a proposal to town council. And that's how it come to be passed to date. My understanding is that it's never been passed as a bylaw in the Municipal Act, and that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is formalize it, because we have 3/4 of our golf course is commercial municipal exempt, and then when we did the subdivision, this parcel that is no different than the rest taxed differently. That's when we did the homework to find out that this is all these, in the past, has been done by, I guess, special motion or whatever by council. So we want to formalize it, everything that we have had in the past, just formalize it and put it into bylaw, I guess.
And Mr. TD, do you have anything to add to that? Because with your considerable experience, you would have been here for a lot of that time.
No, we've, during the years that I've been here, the 11 years, we've granted by precedent, you might say, the non-taxation for municipal purposes to the golf course.
All right. So what I'm wondering then, has the golf course provided you with financial statements that you've been able to review up to this point?
Yes, we do have an application and financial statements from the golf course.
And they're still operating under the same structure as when this agreement was first ratified? Still nonprofit, they still check all the boxes with regards to exemptions?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Teedy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson.
I just have a question for Mr. Lockheed. Do you have any indication of the economic development capacity that the golf course contributes to the community?
No, I don't.
So I believe that, you've been fully operational and that you're one of the places that continues to bring people into the community at a time that lots of other things are shut down.
That's true, and.
You look busy. It looks busy there.
I can honestly say that, given this COVID situation, we were 1 month late starting. We were quite concerned as far as our future goes. And much to our surprise, and I guess, given the fact that people can't travel like they used to, it has been extremely busy. And we've had record amounts of young people coming out, which is great, which is something that we promote and are pushing for that next generation coming up. And I would also like to add, if, given that it carries on, the COVID crisis carries on, and something that we had initiated a couple of years ago was cross-country skiing in the wintertime.
Absolutely.
So that's something else that we offer to the community.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Your worship, I am ready for a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
Your worship, I would move that council direct administration to prepare a bylaw exempting Strathmore Golf Club from all property taxes, and that council cancel all 2020 property taxes for the Strathmore Golf Club. And with your permission, I'd like to speak to the motion. As I said, I do believe that the Strathmore Golf Club is providing an economic development advantage for Strathmore, and I do think that there is opportunity in the staycation environment to really capitalize on that through our planning or through our economic development future in the community. And I know that our downtown businesses are very, very interested in forming partnerships with places like the golf course, the local hotels, not just in summertime, but also in winter, and putting packages together because they know that the snowbirds are going to be looking for activities this winter, and they believe that Strathmore will be a good snowbird destination for those times. So I don't think that this makes a difference in our bottom line. It doesn't impact us any differently than it has since 1982, and I am in favor of this, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Montgomery?
Mr. Teedy, if I could ask you a question, please. Sorry, and what is the total amount per year that is part of the whole exemption that we give the golf course for all of their property? Or what would they be on the hook for if we didn't exempt it?
The, including education, it would be the sum of the 19,886 plus the 8828, so $28,000.
And that would be their total property tax burden?
That is correct. That includes both education, municipal, and wheatland housing.
Okay. Okay, thank you. As much as I can appreciate that the golf course brings people to town and provides some recreational activity, I don't personally see the difference between a golf course, which is a luxury and is basically limited to people that can go golfing. I don't see why we would exempt that over, and maybe you could tell me, Mr. Teedy, is there a reason why we exempt the golf course versus exempting any other recreational clubs properties in town?
None other than we've done it by practice for a number of years, and prior to that, the town contributed an operating grant to the golf club for several years.
Thank you. And if I could ask Mr. Lockheed, if that's okay, is the golf course run in a sustainable way, like that you?
Well, we've been here for next year will be our 100-year anniversary.
Okay.
It is sustainable. We are constantly working to be creative there's a lot of competition out there, and golf courses are not not necessarily a business model that I would get into for making a lot of money at. So we are a not-for-profit. We work to exist and to get the, put programs in place like our junior golf programs in place. You were mentioning about cost, or I was getting the impression from, people that could afford it. We put programs together like for junior golf, for membership for summer is $99, which is extremely affordable when you compare it to other sports. We also have programs together for young people that are less privileged, where there's an application process that goes through for an approval process, so that we will basically finance them to play golf for a year, for that year. So we do take initiatives to help the younger generation get on board with this.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
And if I could say one other thing, the other thing that, we're looking at here is that for all these years, we've been taxed on a certain way, and then because we have this separate parcel, it's, taxed in a completely different way, so we just want to consolidate it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. If I could follow on Councillor Montgomery's line of questioning just before I go to Councillor Cox. Mel, do you know how other municipalities of like-minded size like ours, do they do similar things with the golf courses?
I can't comment specifically on any one instance. I did not do any research on that to make a determination if others do it or not. But it is provided within the context of the MGA to provide an exemption. The other thing I'd like to just point out that of the total $28,000 in taxation, the majority of that is provincial, coming out of provincial coffers. $5,967 comes out of town coffers on this exemption. The balance is all for a reduction to the province and Wheatland Housing, a very small amount.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cox.
So that's helpful for me. So out of I understand the golf course portion and everything like that, but this little 10-acre piece is bothering me because it's not really part of the golf course. They've bought it in the hopes that they can one day turn it over, sell it, and use that money towards other things. So, but out of $8,828, how much of that is for us?
$5,967.
$5,967.
Yes.
So that's all we would be out.
Correct.
Okay, that's. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, and let's go to Mr. Legore and then back to Mrs. Peterson. Jeez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what's being asked for is not unique to Strathmore. There's many different ways that municipalities support their local golf courses unless they are privately owned and operated as for a business. I've been involved in 2 communities recently doing some work where they both help their golf courses, either direct grant or grants and services in kind.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Corbeil.
I was just going to add, Your Worship, that in the $6,000 that of the cost to the town, that Travel Alberta did a 2013 to 2020 framework on the open.alberta.ca, and one of the things that they talk about is how much a person spends when they come to town for a given event if they don't stay overnight versus how much they spend if they do stay overnight. And it would make this $6,000 look paltry when we talk about the people that visit this golf course on a regular basis. And so keeping, the fact that the golf club has maintained sustainability without assistance from council, except those 8 years that Director Teedy has mentioned in his report, is better than lots of communities have done. And so I am not a golfer. I believe in Mark Twain's saying that golf is a good walk ruined. But I understand the economic advantages to having this golf course here. And I'm passionate about making sure that they get the support that they need so that our community can realize the economic benefits of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also agree, actually. I do see the economic benefit, especially right now, that the golf course does bring to town. And I feel that we actually do subsidize other associations and other not-for-profit recreation things. Like, what do we pay to keep an arena open? What do we pay to keep a pool open? So you can't say that we don't kind of offer benefits to other associations. And so for that reason, I do support this as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. My question is to Mr. Lougheed again. I was wondering if you could please tell me what your current membership is at and how much you would need to, and how many members you have, and how much you would need to increase their memberships to make up for this $6,000 shortfall should we not be able to approve this?
The first question is regarding how many. We have 100 it's been difficult for us. There's 300 plus members on the books. However, over the years, because we've been going for a lot of years, some of those people are no longer with us. What I can say is that there's approximately 185 active members. Sorry, what was the other? Oh, as far as the burden to the shareholders and asking them, we've actually had to drop our share price because all the other golf courses in southern Alberta are have dropped theirs dramatically. We have not sold a share through the club for over 10 years because we were trying to maintain a price level. People can sell them privately and have been selling them privately at a much lower rate. So we had to reduce our share prices to get it down to what the market was dictating. So we're not in a position to be able to increase it. We could increase it, but nobody's gonna be buying them, so.
May I ask, please, what the share price is currently?
$3,500 currently.
$3,500. And do those people receive dividends
No,
at all during
no,
the year?
We're not for profit, no,
Okay.
there's nothing.
And do you have any statistics as to who is coming to your golf course, residents versus non-residents?
Oh, well, I can't give you the exact split, but I know there's a lot of people that come out of the city. Even in the league plays that we have, I'm surprised at how many people are coming from Chestermere, Calgary especially, because we put on a good venue at a very cost-effective rate. But I can't give you an exact number. I can just tell you it's a lot from out of town.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe we have a motion on the floor, and I think we've discussed it. So I'll call the motion. All in favor of the motion by Councillor Peterson? And opposed? So we have 6 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you very much, Mel, for your presentation. And that brings us to 9.5, Council Committee Appointments, Strathmore Library Board.
Thank you, Your Worship. Strathmore Town Council is responsible for appointing members to the Strathmore Library Board. We've been recently aware that there is a vacancy there and have received an application for it. It has been reviewed by the nomination committee and approved, so administration is just asking for council to appoint the new member.
Thank you for that, Deborah. Councillor Peterson?
Oh, Your Worship, it gives me great privilege to, that council accept the recommendation from the committee and for the council to appoint Ruth McCluskey to the Strathmore Library Board to a period ending October 31st, 2021. And Your Worship, I've worked with Ruth McCluskey, both in her capacity as Secretary to the Library Board, or Treasurer to the Library Board, and also in her role with the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association for decades, and she'd be a great addition. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to 9.6, policy number 1107, public participation policy, which is on page 46.
Thank you, Your Worship. Public participation and engagement with residents, businesses, and other stakeholders is essential to informing decisions made by municipalities. As such, the Municipal Government Act was updated to require that that every council of a municipality must establish a public participation policy. This policy must be publicly available and will identify how municipalities will approach public participation and engagement. The town of Strathmore already has many initiatives and processes in place for this, but this policy formalizes our processes and brings us in line with current legislation. In response to discussions regarding this policy last week at Committee of the Whole meeting, sections 5.1.3 and 5.1.4 were added to speak to public involvement in council meetings. Administration requests council support in adoption of the public participation policy.
Thank you very much for that, Erica. Any comments or questions for Erica concerning this? Then we're looking for a motion. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council adopts council policy number 1107, public participation policy.
Thank you for that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And the motion is carried. Which now brings us to 9.7, standard shoe building discussions. Standard shoe stop building discussions, page 51. And Mr. Legore, you're speaking to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Legore, I'm just going to quickly grab a little water. So
Want me
I'll
to
be
wait?
right back. Okay, thank you, Mr. Legore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Standard Shoe Building is owned by local people, and they're willing to put it out to community groups at a zero net profit base for themselves. In other words, they're looking to get their utilities and taxes covered. And I'm just requesting permission from council that we proceed with discussions about how we could formulate a lease and how we could get local groups in there, whether it be art, music, culture, historic, or even a tourism office. And we'd just like to proceed with, or all of the, and all of the above. So we're just asking council's permission to proceed with discussions with the owners of the building. They've been most cooperative to date, and they're willing to try and make this happen. I'm prepared to answer any questions that council has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Legore. Any questions from councillors? Comments? Councillor,
I was just going to be
Corbett.
ready with a motion, but if anybody else has questions.
did you have a question? Councillor Montgomery?
You can make your motion.
Sure.
I move the council direct administration to proceed with discussions regarding leasing the Standard Shoe Building.
And now we have a motion on the floor. You have a question or a comment, Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you very much. So my question, Mr. Legore, is just, so you're saying that it's possible that we could be leasing it for just knocking their taxes off, basically? Like plus whatever utilities are incurred, but,
That's correct, and that's estimated to be about $8,000 a year.
yeah.
And if we can get this all put together, it would put a home for all those nonprofit groups, so they've got a base to operate out of. And it's right downtown. It will add to the downtown viability. There's great potential here. This is a very historic building in this town. It dates back to about 1912, I believe. It was the Union Bank building. I don't know if everyone knows that. Still has a vault in the basement and on the main floor. Be ashamed to lose it, and this is an opportunity for the whole community to benefit from.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say, I think this is an amazing opportunity for this council to really support something that we've really been looking at for a number of years and discussing how this could come to fruition in a number of different ways. And so I really am so thankful to the owners of this building and everyone that you've been working with so far, Mr. Glogor, that we're able to even think about this right now. It is a historic building. It's a building that is completely sound. It's a building that is move-in ready, and I'm just so excited about this opportunity. So I completely support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bauer. And I would like to echo that. I'd like to thank Ron and Kelly Warwick for coming up with this idea and being so willing and gracious to share the building with nonprofits and get our various arts and cultural groups together under one roof. And I totally agree with Mr. Legore. It's going to be a real boon to our downtown. It gives another really good use for a beautiful building on our main street. So that's awesome. I'll call the question now. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Which brings us to 9.8, mandatory masks at council meetings. This is again brought forward from administration. Mr. Legore.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we have a policy in place that within the town office, all staff are to wear masks when they're not able to social distance. Basically, they take their masks off when they're working in the office, in their own workstation. We have very good compliance with that. And a question was raised as to whether that applies to the council chambers or not. And so after a number of exchanges of emails, I thought the best way to resolve this is bring it forward to council, let you people have the discussion, you make the decision whether you want masks compulsory in council chambers or not. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Legore. Comments from councillors? Councillor Sobel?
Sure, I'll weigh in. I'll start. So I'd like to start by saying that I never thought of this building as a place that I worked in, traditionally speaking. As members of council, this is a place that we visit to pick up council-related mail and take part in council meetings, including committees of council. Our staff, on the other hand, stay in this building for 40 hours a week, with some actually having to be here more than that. That staff and the building itself comes under the supervision of the CAO, and I've always respected the decisions that perhaps that person has made when it comes to this building and his staff. So when acting CAO Legore issued a protocol that pertains to the wearing of mask using the input of AHS and the fire chief, then I believe it to be common sense this protocol would also include members of council. The benefits of using face masks in indoor spaces where the recommended distancing is not feasible or always possible is well documented. And I've already shared with council through a CC a list of 13 recent and respected articles, reports, and experiments which clearly outline the benefits of wearing masks. At last week's meeting, where 2 councillors decided not to wear masks, a number of occasions occurred where their presence to staff and other members of council was less than 2 meters. But this matters more than that. It's simply about the need for members of council to act as leaders. I would hope that we want our staff to not only be safe, but to feel safe. This is the time to respect the directions of this building's manager, who is also our acting CAO, and the municipality staff's boss. For the very few hours that we spend in this building on a monthly basis, surely wearing a mask to adhere to AHS regulations is not too arduous a request. And I fully support the motion of making masks mandatory for council when in this building. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have no issues wearing a mask into the building, and then when I sit down, I will take it off. I can completely abide by that. But it's kind of funny, and I look at a lot of the protocols and everything else, and I even see it here tonight. You know, I'm fine. I'll wear a mask, and everybody's wearing a mask, all administration. But they're passing computers back and forth, and that's touched, you know, and it's even my husband or whatever, he has the same situation where they have to wear a mask in the vehicle when they're in, but they can pass tools back and forth every day. They don't have, like, it just, I guess you can still wash your hands, but I don't know if it's been followed. I see people remove their masks with dirty hands, and I think unless you're wearing a mask properly and following the proper protocols, I do think it causes a little bit of false security. But like I say, I have no problems wearing it. I can completely abide by that in the town building. I would fully support the CAO if that was his or if that being his decision.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too, my understanding is that this isn't a motion. You're just looking for us to let you know how we feel. Is that correct?
That's basically, we're looking for direction from council. If you people think you should be wearing masks when you're in this building, then I would request that you pass a motion that you follow the protocol for the office.
The protocol that you already have in place, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Worship. What I would like to just clarify is that Councillor Sobel just said that when we're coming and going in the building, that he would like to support that we wear masks. But what we were presented says whether or not it should be mandatory at council meetings. So I'm wondering right now, because Councillor Montgomery and I are 6 feet apart and Councillor Sobel and I are 6 feet apart, is that okay? And you know, like, are we going to be just talking about walking around the building, or are we going to be talking about even while we're having council meetings?
As long as you're, through you, Mr. Mayor, as long as you're able to achieve social distancing, you do not need to wear a mask. And that's protocol even for staff here.
Okay.
For instance, if I'm standing at my office door and I'm talking to Deborah at her office, which is over about 10 feet away, I do not have to have a mask on.
Yeah. And I do not have any
So you look
issue
around
with that.
this room, you all have proper distances between you. So no, you do not need a mask. But if you were sitting at the regular chair you would have for a council meeting, then you should have a mask on because you're not social distancing.
And that's why I just needed clarification, because it did say at council meetings. So now that's been clarified. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, I apologize. I should have, I had a motion prepared for this, and I was kind of taken aback by the motions that were submitted by administration, but I'm going to go ahead and read my motion first, and perhaps that'll make discussing this particular issue a little easier. So I would move that all members of council adhere to the CAO's directions in regards to the wearing of masks in municipal buildings effective immediately.
Thank you for that. And if I could ask a question, so then, Mr. Legore, if that motion were to pass, then social distancing would still apply as far as not wearing a mask at that time?
That's correct.
So we would follow the lead of how you do it here then?
Yes.
Okay. Is that clear for everyone on council then, what we're doing? Okay. So any further discussion on the motion that was just made? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? We have 1, 2, 3, opposed? So we have 5 in favor and 2 opposed. Thank you very much, council. And that brings us to item 10, 10.1, reports from councillors from committees on which they sit. Page 78. Councillor Sobel, I believe you're first.
Thank you. I do have one committee report, Your Worship, on the Traffic Advisory Committee, which virtually met on September the 8th. A number of pending projects were reported by staff. I'm sorry, I'll just stop here. Deborah, I'll send you this, okay? So you don't have to type. Concerns were raised at the committee and brought to the attention of administration, includes the intersection of Highway 1 and Westmount in regards to the possibility of making a left-hand turn from Strathmore Lakes onto Highway 1 a dual lane, the intersection of George Freeman Trail and Centennial Drive in regards to improving pedestrian safety at that crosswalk, and the intersection of Highway 1 and George Freeman Trail in regards to preventing collisions and improving safety in general. 2 of these matters are contingent on having Department of Transportation involved and administration continue to work on suitable solutions. And that's all I have for that committee, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that, and that brings us to Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, with respect to Community Futures, our annual general meeting was held last week at Rocking Our Ranch. It was lovely. We all had a very nice night. I got to see Chief Ore as well as Councillor Sam Crowfoot. I also got to get my picture taken with the beautiful sunset in the background with Martin Shields, so that was lovely as well. Very nice dinner. Great to see everyone, finally. And then my next meeting was Wademza, and I just wanted to touch base on a few positives. The call volumes ending August 31st, year to date, were 2,697, which is a 5.5% increase from last year at the same time. Over 140 calls over is what the 5.5% equates to. They are averaging 400 calls a month, which is the highest they've ever done. April was the only month that was a little sad, and it was only 296. The forecast for the full year is to hit over 4,000 calls, which is way over what they've ever done before. Wademza also offers a couple of scholarships, and well, actually they offer 4. Only 2 have been applied for and will be awarded for $1,000 each, and those are going to applicants that further educate themselves and are within the community. The reporting on the Lucas devices, they've almost all been given out except for 2. And they are performing well above what they expected them to. Get me wrong, but the actual devices are bringing back 45% stats versus the 20 that are brought back manually. And a win-win was that Rocky Ford actually saved a life with one this summer. So kudos to those, and kudos for Wademza for getting those. That's awesome. With respect to the COVID situation, only 1 staff member in the entire time, frontline worker, tested positive for COVID, and they investigated it. It was a PPE issue. It's been rectified, and he was sick for about 4 days, and recovered no problems. Nobody else has contracted the disease. They are still worried. Their largest worry is non-symptomatic patients, because they literally have no way of knowing that they have COVID. And other than that, all good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cox. Any other reports? Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Cox and I attended the Wheatland Housing Management Body Board last week. We have a brief report, and I would ask Acting CEO Lagore to add if you so wish. But basically, Wheatland Housing Management Body contracted George Berry Architecture out of Red Deer to prepare a schematic for this new build that we've been looking at for a very long time. We're trying to move the project ahead. And so George Berry was, business out of Red Deer was successful in that. Additionally, everyone has seen in the news that Alberta Health Services, through the Alberta government, asked for expressions of interest from 31 communities to put forward expressions of interest regarding a different level of seniors care and community. Strathmore was one of those communities. And I bring that up because I want to commend the people, Pat Fuel before me, other councillors that sat on Wheatland Housing, and has pursued this relentlessly, and also the oversight and assistance that we've had from all of the members on that board, particularly Chair Glenn Kester, and also most recently from Mr. Lagore. And so we have put forward that, we'll be putting forward that expression of interest. And it's a hopeful time, so stay tuned. And I don't know if you want to add any more to that. Yeah. And the other thing I would just report on is that on last Friday, Marigold Library and Wheatland Irrigation District did a joint groundbreaking of their new site. They are underway. They introduced their contractor and all the people involved. It was a really nice morning. I thank you, Mr. Legore, for attending that on behalf of the town, and for fellow councillors, Sobel and Bauer, who also attended. And it's an exciting venture. And I think that one of the things that was, there were three things that were really brought home. One was the inclusion of Siksika in the introductions, and our hopefulness around Siksika moving into that whole Marigold community. The second one was comments by the chair of Marigold and several other members about the extraordinary support they received from the town, and that was so heartfelt. And the last one was a private letter that I received from Michelle Toombs, the CAO of Marigold, where she talks about the leadership of our mayor being so critical to the process going forward, and how grateful she is for that. So it was a lovely event, and congratulations and thank you, Mayor, and Mr. Legore, and all the Strathmore administration and staff that really has contributed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report and those nice comments. I wanted to thank all the councillors and Deputy Mayor Peterson who stepped up in the last week, and your appearance and your work on your committees is very much appreciated. I had a downtime. I wasn't doing very well last week, but I appreciate the fact that you get out there and you do so many things and you work so hard in our community on committees, and also the events that are scheduled to open things. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to report one thing. There is an AGM for the Strathmore Overnight Shelter. It will be happening on Saturday at 8 a.m. at the Harvest Healing Church. So that's this Saturday, September 19th, at the Harvest Healing Church. If you're interested in becoming a member of the board or running for any of the elected positions, please be there 8 a.m. sharp. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Peterson.
If I could just ask, I've had, again, some requests from seniors for information about the handy bus, and hopeful that a report could come forward. I know that some of the seniors had mentioned that Councillor Montgomery had spoken to them, I think in August 18th, somewhere around there, at the Wheatland Housing Management Body, and they're anxious for updates as to what is occurring with the Handy Bus Association. And the other thing, Your Worship, I would move these reports to accept them for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion to accept the reports as information. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We go on to item 11, items directly related to council. I don't think we have anything there.
I do.
You do. So, sorry, Councillor Bauer.
You know what, I could do it under questions, Your Worship.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Like the smile cookie thing?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, sure. That brings us to item 12, bylaws, 12.1, bylaw number 20-21, face coverings bylaw. And Mr. West, you are here to present on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. West will speak to this shortly. The intent was to introduce a bylaw to council, and if you felt comfortable, move forward with first reading, so it would be on the books and ready to move quickly if we have another wave of COVID. The intent was not to pass a bylaw, it's just preparedness, and beyond that, I'll let our fire chief speak to it. Mr. West, please.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. West.
Thank you and good evening, Council. It's a new configuration, so I'll try and talk to everyone. Before you, item 12.1 is the proposed face covering bylaw for the town of Strathmore. As CAO Legore mentioned, the recommendation and request of administration is for first reading and first reading only of this bylaw. I will acknowledge one error that I would ask for council, if they so choose, to amend the bylaw to remove 8.3 because it is exactly the same as 8.2, word for word. And then the coming into force, of course, would be not October 1st, but when, upon third reading. October 1st was in there in case you guys were interested in reading them all tonight, but, and I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Help me. If we have an outbreak and, this gets ugly, will a SOL be required again?
100%.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Cox. Any other questions? So, Councillor Peterson, did you have a question?
I have a procedural question, and it is with regards to amendments, so to thinking about amendments. And I'm wondering if that is a possibility within this prior to giving first reading, if this council so desires to move ahead on that. And so I don't know process, what I'm
Through you,
saying.
Mr. Mayor, typically you would give first reading to the bylaw, and then you can proceed with amendments to the bylaw. You can't amend the bylaw until it's on the table.
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, thank
and
you.
before you vote on first reading, you would make your amendments.
Right. Before you move to first reading,
Yeah, just move first reading,
and then before you move second reading.
and before you have second reading, or even vote on first reading, you can start to make amendments to it. And then you would vote for first reading as amended.
Right, that's what I was asking.
Is that
Yep,
clear?
okay, yep.
So
yep.
you're saying you put the motion for first reading on the
As
floor?
amended, as amended. You
And
could
then you
amend it
can
right
add
now.
amendments.
You could discuss amendments. yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was wondering. And then I have a question for Chief West.
Okay. Councillor Bauer, I think, had a question.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. It's a procedural question as well. I would just like to know, with this type of bylaw, would you please be able to outline the process of whether or not we would be able to access public consultation at any point, or whether or not we would be able to have a public hearing? What, with this type of bylaw, what type of public participation are we able to elicit?
So there were, I'm going to try and be very short instead of going with the long answer. It's very difficult because the time that it takes to establish an appropriate public participation, we get that much deeper into where we needed to make a decision and move forward. So with what we're trying to address and what we're trying to deal with, that public consultation piece becomes very difficult. We have the opportunity after first reading to have those formal conversations with the Chamber of Commerce and get their feelings about things and talk to the executive director and other individuals in the community. But as far as, okay, we need to have an emergency meeting and do second and third reading because our numbers have gone up and they can turn around in a day, that we lose a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of traction.
If I could follow that, I have a question for you, Mr. West, and well, it's actually two questions, but they combine to probably give us a lot more clarification. My question is, having talked to people through the wonderful world of Facebook, and the questions are like, why would you do a first reading, and how does doing a first reading then lend speed of implementation for an outbreak? Like, what's the difference between just bringing the bylaw separately and trying to get 3 readings, as opposed to why put it out there for first reading now, and then, like, how does it lend speed of implementation?
Well, the thinking around a first reading and a first reading only was that it then, by bringing this forward and following the political process where council then has the opportunity to debate and if so choose, do that first reading, but then fulsome conversations can happen and take place based on the actual bylaw and not feelings, because this isn't, the challenge is in the community, or in the Facebook community, it's a yes or a no, but it's not a yes or a no. We're not talking about yes or no. We're talking about social infrastructure or a loss of social infrastructure. We have to have the ability to analyze where an outbreak has taken place in our community. And just because we go over some magical number doesn't mean that, okay, now the bylaw has to be enacted. We have to be able to analyze. We have to talk with Alberta Health. We have to talk with the school board or Alberta Health Services, or depending on what happens. And the crystal ball as far as being able to guess if or where an outbreak may occur is broken.
So in your opinion then, having it out there and done as a first reading does improve efficiency should we have an outbreak?
Well, and it demonstrates that we're prepared. To me, it demonstrates that we are prepared to make a move should we experience something in our community or around our community, because we are a service hub for the region, that we feel we need to address by taking extra precautions, and that's with face covering.
So would you then also reassure the public that even if this gets passed for first reading, it doesn't necessarily mean the mask bylaw is coming in right away?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. It's, I'm hoping that we never have to have second and third reading, and everybody continues to do the job that they've done, and we continue to communicate the way that we've communicated, because that's part of the success of where we are at. But we need to be prepared and to follow the regular process of a bylaw process is, it will take too long. We'll get, a week is a huge difference in helping to curb or stop any outbreak that might occur or a spread that might be happening in the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Legore?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add to Mr. West's comments, to try and give it 3 readings at one meeting, one vote can stop it, because you need unanimous consent to proceed to third reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as Mr. West has said, time can be crucial in this, depending upon the circumstances. The other thing it does, right now, you have rumors floating in the community. Nobody knows really what the bylaw is or what it will look like. By having something that's given first reading with amendments, as you discussed here, a possibility, then you've got something concrete that the public can look at and debate meaningfully. Because right now, it's emotions, rumors, etc. There's no fact out there as to what is really before you. By giving it first reading, making those amendments, then you have something out there. Now, I want to go back to Councillor Bauer's earlier question, and Mr. West talked a bit about this. You don't have to have a public hearing on any bylaw other than land use bylaws. This is not a land use issue. So there's not a formalized public hearing on it. That does not mean that council can turn away from public input if you want. There's many ways you can do that. You can do that through an online survey, like SurveyMonkey or something, for the residents to respond to. You can have them submit letters, etc. You could go to another venue where you can get people in and have social distancing and have them speak to it if you want. There is many ways that you can have public input without a public hearing, if council so desired. As Mr. West said, hopefully this bylaw never has to get second and third reading. It's preparedness. That's what emergency planning is all about, is being prepared. And that's what your fire chief is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peterson.
So my question to you, Chief West, is in this bylaw, if we were to, I look at the bylaw and I think, what protection does community have to know succinctly that we would not do this on a whim? So, my preference would be that the proposed amendment would be that once a recommendation comes forth from our Emergency Management Committee, the bylaw would be enacted. That would be my proposed amendment. so that people had assurances that the people who kept our community safe through the peak of COVID would be the same ones who would make that reasoned determination going forward, so that, that hopefully that our community wouldn't backslide into shutdown or into another emergency being declared. So I guess I'm asking direction around administration, and I'm asking your thoughts on that, about whether that helps or hinders.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you could not amend the bylaw, as you suggested, to have it that be enacted upon a recommendation from there.
Okay.
You would give it first reading, either as is or as
Yes.
amended, how you do.
Yeah.
Then you would pass a subsequent motion
To have that
this
added.
bylaw not be brought back to council until you receive a recommendation from your fire chief or your emergency management committee.
I see. Okay.
So then we would direct administration to draft something like that up then.
That's right. We would just sit on it
Okay,
until the fire chief and your emergency management committee recommended that a bylaw be implemented. We'd bring it back to council very quickly then, probably through a special meeting if it was too far away from a regular meeting.
okay, thank you. So as far as the public's concerned then, having this first reading, as you said, gets it out there so that they can look at, study, understand the bylaw. It's there ready for us to implement if we have an outbreak or if it becomes very serious. And then we use the the ECC to give us direction on when to implement it. Is that a good?
Your Worship, that's an excellent response, because, I mean, without understanding, how important definitions are in any type of legislation, regulation, rules, but also some of the exemptions that are identified in here, people don't know what we're talking about as far as exemptions. So that gets out, and then a little more sense of calm takes place versus, you all must, you all shall, you all will, which is not the intention of this, nor.
So this should alleviate some concerns as opposed to not having it, and they don't know when it's happening and what's happening.
Yeah.
Gotcha, thank you. Councillor,
I'm sorry.
Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a quick procedural question, actually kind of related to Councillor Cox's. So if we do have an outbreak, we have to declare another soul. Could they not implement this regardless of going through council? No, but do you know what I mean? Like, this could be implemented regardless whether we do first reading tonight or not, if we've declared a soul.
Yes.
So
Absolutely,
my question
100%.
is then, is there, I don't know, maybe we ruffled feathers when we really didn't need to ruffle feathers.
I don't want to use old terminology, but this is a force multiplier when we're all in this together and we're working off of this document versus me requesting a state of local emergency and applying the dictatorial rules and regulations that are given the Director of Emergency Management. I really don't want to go there, and I would much sooner have 8 or 10 of us talking about how we followed a process than, we don't know why, and then everybody's up in arms because I work for you guys at the end of the day, right? Here, this buys in the community, and you are involved in this decision-making process. Yes, I mean, the state of local emergency can usurp all of that, but I would sooner do this whenever we possibly can than do it that way.
The only reason I say is because with declaring a soul, that is a lot quicker than trying to get a special council meeting with everybody coming together. So if public safety is in jeopardy, I actually might prefer it just be the soul that implements it ASAP instead of
And
like this way.
And again, it is, as you suggested, it could be a stopgap. But as the Dem, if I had to do that, I would only use it as a stopgap to get to this. And if that was 3 days, 4 days, or tomorrow, I could wait till tomorrow. But, if it's going to be several days, well then, I would probably have to use that stopgap measure.
Yeah, I do appreciate seeing it before if I, like we say, we hope we never ever have to get here. So I do appreciate seeing it. I just thought, you know, like Councillor Cox said, a SOL would be a simpler, faster, more effective way to implement this in the emergency that we would be in. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Montgomery, because you can't light up.
Oh, I can light up, don't you worry. I just have a procedural question as well. If this is, sorry, my question is just a procedural one. If this is defeated, does that mean that this cannot be brought back for 6 months?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of anything in the procedure bylaws that would prevent this from coming back.
Okay, I was under
before
the
council within 6 months.
Okay, I was under the impression that if there was a motion made then and it was defeated, that a similar motion could not be made for 6 months unless it was made by I think it was somebody on the.
That should pertain to specific matters. It's
Okay.
not normal for that to be broad brush where it includes everything.
Okay.
There is issues with our procedures bylaw because we have copied the City of Calgary. The City of Calgary operates under a charter in addition to the MGA, which is quite different than with us. And we need to go through that bylaw and make some corrections to it and get it back before council.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. West. You've answered a lot of my questions. A couple things I just want to point out. Of the 17 municipalities in Alberta at this point that have mask-wearing bylaws, 7 of them are triggered, are enacted by a triggering mechanism, anywhere from 10 to 18 cases. But I don't see anybody in regards to one that's pending like this, and I think it's brilliant. I just think it's something that we can discuss, and I like the idea of having the option at least of running this through council, and if we didn't have this bylaw, then you wouldn't have a choice. In a SOL, you would have to just enact, but here you do have a choice. So, I think it's a situation where it's no harm, no foul, and it's, we all pray that we're never going to get to the day where we have to do this, but, we've seen situations close to our home that suggest that it's always a possibility. The only other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to really emphasize the fact that this is a bylaw that deals with face covering in an indoor public premise and/or public vehicle. I've had numerous people telling me they don't like the idea of going to a park and putting a mask on. So at those situations, the 2 meter distancing rule still applies, but I think things would have to get really, really out of control for us to go full face mask in public places. But at this time, this bylaw only deals with the 2, so I just wanted to re-emphasize that. And thank you very much for the work done on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. So just another question for the chief, and that is, if this gets defeated, and we then have to turn over to a SOL, and we wind up with 10 cases in the town, and you decide to enact a SOL, then there's a cost, right? Then we have to set up a center again. So unlike this, where we could enact it immediately as well, if we had first reading.
We can,
Yeah.
yes, that's correct.
Without cost, because then if we do it this way, we don't have to set up an emergency center.
That's correct.
So this could also,
Yeah, even setting up the center is going to be a much smaller cost now because
Yeah.
everything that we built before
Is there, yeah.
had a life after
Yeah.
or during COVID. So as far as the center is concerned, I don't believe that we're going to have to staff it the way that we needed to in the first place. We've got all of our communication strategies and everything that we put in place that helped us to be as successful as we were through the first process. We kind of know what we're doing. So this is a tool that involves all of us in going forward.
So this is the together process as opposed to the unilateral process?
This is the.
So this is where we could all work together cooperatively and do as acting CAO Lagore said, and then bring in interested public members. If they wanted to speak at second reading, they have the right to do that.
And
They can request that through our legislative services.
through your worship to Councillor Peterson. Yes, this causes us to be and you've heard me say this before in one of my other previous presentations this year, this causes us to be a chorus and not a voice. Okay? This is exactly what that does.
So Councillor Cox and I were present the other day at a presentation by Dr. Joni McNeely, who had some very, very clinical approach to that when she presented to Wheatland Housing Management Body. She would also like to have the opportunity, if allowed, to present here. I'm sure there will be other people on both sides of the issue that would like that. I think that would be the best way to get the voices out and to move forward if we need to as a unit and not as a bipartisan unilateral voice. And I thank you.
Thank you. And just before I go to Councillor Corbeil, I must admit I had some reservations when I first saw this coming to us and we're looking to give first reading to it. But I think the word that's key is one that Councillor Sobel used, and that it's a pending. It's a pending thing. So it's there for us should we need to enact it quickly based on the cases in the town. So I just want to reassure the public that that's basically all we're doing here tonight, is to get something set up should the need arise. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. I just want some clarification, because I think I heard two answers and I'm not sure. If we have to enact this, we may not have to set up an ECC? Or we likely would because of the state we would be in?
No, we might not have to. I mean, depending on the information that we have and to make the decision to have a special meeting of council to enact this, there's no administrative requirements other than it becomes a function and a feature for the municipality and the businesses, as well as a little bit of bylaw enforcement support for those businesses that are struggling with people that don't want to follow the bylaw. But this doesn't trigger, by doing 3 readings of this, if we get to that point, would not be a reason to trigger an activation of the Emergency Coordination Center and or any further pandemic response coordination.
And then I just have one more comment quickly. When we're talking about like unilateral decisions and stuff like that, when we're in a SOL, I want you to know that it will still be a chorus, because we 110% support our ECC, and it was great with the communication because we knew exactly what was going on. So don't think that you are ever alone during a SOL, because we are 110% behind you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
I just have a point of clarification. So then Councillor Corbeil, what you're saying is then that you support Trent in his role and you support him in his advocacy for this?
I 110% support the decisions he had made during the SOL. I 110% support the preparedness that they have. I'm not so sure I'm supporting the first reading of this, it would be my clarification, only because I see that they are prepared in case. I haven't quite decided yet, I haven't gone through my mind yet. I always thought that if we were in this state, we would have declared a SOL.
And now we've heard
So, Mr. West, did you want to speak to Councillor Corbeil's concerns as far as this first reading and the necessity of it versus a SOL?
I think I will reiterate what I said, obviously not very well, so I'll try and do it better this time. With the state of local emergency, things can happen really fast, and people are caught off guard, and we have to also fold in a whole bunch of support where this allows people to prepare and plan, understand if they're in or they're out, if they already have corporate regulations as it identifies in, let me find it here. Exemptions 41H. This has no impact on schools or businesses undertaking face covering measures through provincial guidelines, corporate requirements, and/or recognized provincial professional bodies. So the dentists, for instance, they have their own regulations. That's a provincial professional body. So we're not going to worry about them. They already have their marching orders given to them by their bodies. Many businesses have provincial guidelines that they're working under. So we're not really worried about them. It's the ones that don't really have anything or have or need some support. Well, this is some formalized support. So the exemption part is really an important piece of the public understanding of this bylaw as well. And thank you for your 110% support. Having gone through that the first, well, this year, I look back and in the after action report that we've completed, and there are lots of things that I would have wanted to do differently given the chance, because it was that kind of an emergency, not the traditional kind of an emergency. And having council more engaged and closer to the functioning and the decision making as we were going through March, April, May, and June would have been far better for all of us.
Thank you for that. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Sobel?
Sure, if I can find. Your worship, I would move that council give first reading to bylaw number 20-21, face covering bylaw.
Thank you, and we have a motion for first reading on the floor, and should this pass, then I'm thinking administration may need to direct our communications department to really get some messaging out as to how this first reading came about, what it entails, what it does for the community, what it is doing as a potential bylaw should the need arise.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We've already had discussions on that, and we'll move very quickly on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sobel?
Just to clarify once again, amendments after the vote, correct?
No, you can do amendments now if you want, before you give it first, or vote on the first reading. However, the amendment of adding in at the
Yes.
recommendation needs to be separated. That's
So
not part of the bylaw.
I would like this, I would move also that the 8.3 be removed from this bylaw, and that 9.1 be amended to read upon third reading in lieu of October 1st, 2020.
Those amendments are in order, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Does all of council understand those amendments that have been proposed? Okay, are there any other amendments? Councillor Montgomery?
I just think we should straw poll the amendments as they are put forward. I believe our procedure bylaw suggests that that's what should be done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would take these amendments as they come, and then it won't get confusing, like vote on this one, and then you can put another amendment on the floor. You could have 20 amendments to this bylaw if you wanted.
Right.
I think it would just keep it clear for everyone. If you get an amendment, make a decision on it, then move on to the next amendment.
Okay, so we can call the vote on each one?
Yes, that's
So,
correct.
Councillor Sobel, could you read your first one was to strike the repeat of 8.3, or to strike?
Remove 8.3 from the bylaw.
The repeated one, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the vote on that one. All in favor of that amendment? Okay, that amendment has passed.
And my second amendment, your worship, would be to remove October 1st, 2020 in 9.1 and add upon third reading in lieu.
of that date, of October 1st? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor of that amendment? Sorry, did you have your hand up? I didn't. Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask a question before, if it's not too late? So we're just saying that will say now that the bylaw will come into effect once it is past third reading, essentially.
Right, in lieu of that date of October 1st.
Okay, so we can, okay.
Sure.
Sorry.
I kind of thought that part of that was what Councillor Peterson recommended as far as upon the, it's another amendment?
Totally different.
Okay.
The motion.
Okay, I'll call the question again. All in favor of that amendment? That's passed. Any other amendments that are to be suggested by councillors?
Yes, I have one, Your Worship.
Councillor Montgomery.
So I personally believe that that the usage of face masks by the general public during, let's say, state of emergency times should be left up to the responsibility of the individual, and I hope that people in Strathmore will be responsible and take care of their fellow neighbors. And one point that I guess I do consider to be valid is that there are businesses out there that are trying to get people to wear face masks. And I believe that is their right. A business has the right to insist that you wear a face mask, and if you choose to enter that establishment, or if you want to conduct business with that business, then you are obligated to abide by the rules that business sets forward. That being said, I would like to suggest an amendment where instead of making it a blanket kind of application across the community, and then obligating businesses to put up signage and whatnot, and then with the threat of them being fined if they don't have the signage up. I would like to suggest that we amend it to say that no person may enter an indoor public premises and/or vehicle without a face covering if they have been instructed or asked to do so by the business. And that way the businesses will have the force of bylaw to compel people to wear masks if they want to, but businesses will not be forced to, and then the public will also be able to choose what businesses to go to as well. So essentially my amendment would be to reverse the obligation and make it so that only businesses that choose to compel people to wear face masks, the bylaw would stand behind those people. Thank you.
I think I'm a little confused. Maybe you could clarify.
What section are we doing?
It's under signage, right? Are you saying that's in like taking out the current 5.1 and replacing it with?
So currently item 3.1 or clause 3.1 says a person must wear a face covering in an indoor public premises and/or public vehicle unless the person is separated from other persons installed by a screen, shield, or other barrier. I'm saying that it should only apply, the bylaw should only apply to businesses that have signage up, that choose to have signage up. So if Walmart, for instance, they want to put up a sign that says you have to have a face mask on, and somebody does not want to comply with that, Walmart can call bylaw and say, hey, we have a sign that says you have to wear a face mask, and would you come and enforce that, please? That way the businesses are not having to fight with people that don't want to wear face masks if that's what the business chooses to ask them to do.
Sorry, if I could just ask you one more question. Are you also saying then to take out the part where it says businesses should display a sign? Must prominently display a sign?
No, like if a business wants people to wear masks in the business, they should certainly have to put up a sign asking people to wear masks, and certainly if they wanted the let's say, force of the bylaw behind them, they would have to put up signage that would comply with our bylaw, essentially, in order to get that protection.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sobel.
Just to clarify, so is this just an amendment to enable businesses to opt out of this bylaw?
You would essentially have to opt in to the bylaw if you're a business.
So everybody would be, well, we're talking the same thing. So anybody who doesn't want to comply with this bylaw just doesn't have to put up a sign.
Yeah, any business that wants to have people coming in and not ask them to wear a face mask or force them to wear a face mask, then that business just would not have to do that.
Okay, so do you have the amendment that's been suggested by Councillor Montgomery? Does everyone?
I just have a question,
Councillor
Your Worship, a
Peterson?
question of legislative services. So does this proposed amendment delete the purpose of the bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it might, and if we're going to proceed with it, I'd like to get some legal advice on how we word that. I appreciate where Councillor Montgomery's coming from, where it's an opt-in, but I don't feel comfortable making that amendment here, or recommending an amendment for you tonight. I understand where he's coming from, but I'd like some advice on how to word that, if that was to proceed.
Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Montgomery?
The idea came to me actually because like under section 3, like section 3 is titled prohibition, and yet it doesn't prohibit, it compels people to wear face masks. And so I thought that we could prohibit people from entering an establishment if there's a sign that asks them to wear a mask. That's where the idea of it came from, essentially. So it's just basically reversing it from a compulsion to a prohibition. But yeah, sorry, if you guys need more time to process that, that's fine too.
Okay, so Mr. Legore, you're saying your staff would feel more comfortable getting legal advice on terminology?
Yes, I want to make sure that we word it properly before you vote on that, because
Okay.
if we don't do it right, it could neutralize the whole bylaw, is my concern. I
Right.
have no problem with the recommendation, I understand what's coming forward. I just want to make sure that we get the wording of it properly for council.
Okay, thank you. So what does that do then as far as a motion to have first reading? We're going to wait on this until we get direction?
It can still be later.
Oh, you can have the amendment come after, sorry, okay. So are there any other amendments that councillors want to bring forward? And if not, do we have a motion on the floor then? We need to have the motion concerning amendments now.
Yeah, we have to vote on that one, right?
Oh, yeah, right, okay. Well, we can't vote on that unless there's terminologies.
Oh, okay, okay.
So we do have a motion on the floor. Mr. Legore.
That's correct, Your Worship. You do have a motion on the floor. You can vote on first reading now as amended. Then Councillor Montgomery could make a motion directing administration to seek legal opinion on amending 3.1 to make it optional, I guess, for businesses to comply, something like that. And then we would try and get some wording addressing what he's spoken to that will achieve that. Do you understand what I'm saying, everyone?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have that. So then you'll be prepared to make a motion, Mr. Montgomery, Councillor Montgomery? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for first reading. All in favor? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3.
I just have a quick question then. So if this goes through with Councillor Mont, and then we vote, and then he makes a motion and vote on that? Because if we don't pass this, then he can't read that, right?
That's correct.
So I'll call, all in favor? Okay, we have 4 in favor, opposed? We have 3 opposed. Okay, so first reading has passed, and then you can present a motion as far as what you would like to amend, or to direct administration.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll make 2 motions, please. So I guess I will move that administration seek advice on how to modify the bylaw to prohibit people from not wearing face masks where they are being asked to by a particular business, if that's clear enough.
Yes.
Okay.
I think
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to direct administration for that clarification from legal. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we have 6-1 in favor. And your next motion you want to talk about?
Yeah, my next motion would just be for administration to bring back let's say, an amendment to the bylaw. Yeah, and I guess it would be just for the existing bylaw. An amendment that would suggest a threshold at which point the bylaw would be activated and then deactivated, based on the active number of cases reported by AHS for Strathmore.
Mr. West?
I'd like to speak to that, and I was kind of hoping that that would have been one of the questions that would have been asked earlier. So thank you for asking that question. There's been a number of conversations with a number of municipalities, and when we use the AHS threshold for the town of Strathmore, that works out to 6.75 people. 6.75 people. Like, we would be there today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe on Saturday. How do we enforce a bylaw that is on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again with a threshold? And that was my conversation with many other municipalities was, you set it at 10. Well, at 3:45 every day they come out with where everybody is at for that particular period of time. And so all day long you were under the bylaw because you were over that threshold number that you've put into your bylaw. And then at 3:45 it comes out and now you're under. Okay, so now the bylaw is off for the rest of the evening. We're don't have to wear masks tonight. But then tomorrow you're back over the number. So this whole event has been more difficult to communicate through this entire year, and we rocked it with communication. To try and communicate that is a fool's errand. We would never be able to stay ahead of it. I mean, we spent so much time trying to communicate the Alberta Health Services mapping to people. It wasn't even our map. We talked about it in every single thing that we did because it wasn't clear. And so when I talked to my peers across the province and said, how are you going to do this? And they're like, oh, yeah, this is a communication nightmare for those that have passed a bylaw with a threshold, especially a threshold that is so low when we're talking about 13,500 people, which gets us to the 6.75. And the fact that we are a service hub for the region, we'll always be over that threshold number. And so that was intentionally left out, and that was the purpose and reason, Councillor Montgomery, that I stayed away from the number, because we can communicate however council chooses that it's on, and it's on for, I mean, Calgary does it for every 3 months. They're not going to revisit their bylaw until December sometime. But we'll use what's happening in our community and not just a random number to determine what's best for our communities. Made in Strathmore Solutions. That's the way we've been through this whole thing, and that's the way we want to continue to be, based on what's happening and what's reasonable. So
Thank you.
I hope that understood.
Thank you. Mr. Legore?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. Also, it's an enforcement nightmare. It's nearly impossible to enforce that because that threshold is going up and down. Your bylaw is in place. It's not effective or not enforced. It's a nightmare. It's impossible, really, for your enforcement people to deal with it.
Okay, thank you both of you for your clarification. Councillor Montgomery, are you comfortable? Do you want your motion with the amendment as far as the threshold to stand, or would you like to rescind or withdraw the motion?
I throughout this whole COVID process, something that has been, I guess, quite important to me is that decisions are made based on facts and the best knowledge we have at the time, and I want people to be able to go about their lives as normally as possible to the extent that they can while still being safe, and I take your point. I don't personally think that going with 6 people active cases is a good number. I think we could go with a higher target than that, which I understand there's risk to that. I do. But
And that's the provincial threshold for the town with 13,500 people, 6.75 people.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and you know, we've been over that number a couple months ago, and you know, and we didn't have to resort to mask wearing in order to get control of that. And yeah, and I think the good thing about having a threshold, first of all, we could go with, I can appreciate, you know, if it's a day in, day out change, then, you know, certainly that would be tough to kind of manage. But if you look at a community like, say, Cochrane, where they have a 2-week period where if the numbers are below a certain threshold for 2 weeks, then the bylaw is rescinded. And I would prefer that, so that it's not an open-ended, because I think we'll actually have a harder time getting people to comply if it is open-ended. If there's no end in sight, then why would somebody, you know, continue to wear their mask, you know, beyond what they feel is unsafe? But if they know that there's an end in sight, then I believe people will be more likely to comply with the bylaw. And that is why I am suggesting this amendment. Like I said, I believe it'll put the responsibility on the people of Strathmore to act responsibly, so that we can avoid getting to a point where we need to have a mask bylaw. Thank you.
So if, I thank you for that clarification, Councillor Montgomery. Would you be willing to read your motion again then, your amendment, sorry? You had a motion, sorry, you were directing administration to come back with a possible threshold number?
Yeah, like, I guess, like, first of all,
Or a
like,
trigger point.
if administration would like to come, I would like them to come back with an amendment to the bylaw that contains a threshold. What that threshold will have to be will be debatable, and then as well what the, let's say, the period of time that it's enacted would be, you know, debatable. But yes, please bring back an amendment with if council desires, of course, with an amendment where it would be triggered at a certain case number, active case number, and then, let's say, canceled or suspended when it falls below that case number after, you know, for a certain period of time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Legore.
To you, Mr. Mayor, I recommend that the motion be that administration be directed to bring back information on a targeted threshold, the target threshold, and then we understand what you're talking about, and we'll cover the whole broad spectrum of that, sorry.
Okay, and then, so like if it were to pass, then the bylaw would come back with that amendment then?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess, sorry, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
So we have that motion on the floor now. Is there discussion on that motion? Councillor Peterson?
Yeah, so I'm confused about it. So we wouldn't have a number at the front end, but we might have a number at the back end? Like, I just don't know. Like, I agree with Councillor Montgomery that acting on fact, utilizing the best possible information out there, and keeping our community safe and open, those things are really important. And they've been sidelined a bit because of the debate and the misinformation around it. So I kind of like it, having a number at the back end, but I really like the idea of what Mel said, and she's been a part of the emergency management from a council perspective, on trusting you, trusting your team in the recommendation to council through this process, so that, you know, if you could recommend the emergency management, you know, would be the recommender to enact it and to deactivate it, based on the best possible information that you have in a front line, better than anyone else. Like, that to me makes sense. Putting numbers to it seems unnaturally cumbersome.
If I may. So I thought of an example that I wanted to share with you. If we have an outbreak in a nursing home, God forbid, and there's 10 active cases in Hawaii with dinosaurs, right? If there's 10 active cases in a nursing home, they're already dealing with all of that process in that nursing home and dealing with the families that are involved in that. That would be one of the things that I would come and say, no, like, it's 10, yes, that's over our threshold, but it's isolated and it's contained and it's being dealt with by professionals, schools. That's the science I want to use, the facts, the reality on the ground and what's happening in and around Strathmore to drive and direct our decision-making and not a random number, because when you put 10 in the bylaw and those people that you didn't hear from see 10 on the map, doesn't matter whether it's in a nursing home or it's in a school, or it doesn't matter, they're expecting that this bylaw is enacted for their safety. But their safety's not at jeopardy, right? So.
Thank you for that, Mr. West. Councillor Sobel.
I think somebody's before me.
Oh,
go ahead.
Councillor Bauer.
Oh, Councillor Bauer. Oh, good.
Thank you, Worship. Originally, when I first looked at the bylaw, I had thought that putting in outcomes or numbers would help to guide the bylaw in a more positive way. But I really do believe now that putting something in is going to hinder the process, whether or not it be at the front end or the back end. We could have, God forbid, the outbreak at perhaps a nursing home, or it could be a community outbreak, or it could be a group gathering of a cohort. We don't, by just putting in a number, we're not allowing the people that deal with these emergency situations and know the facts to deal with the right information. We're just talking about a number. It's going to scare people. It's going to put more fear into the situation, which has already caused individuals to become irrational in certain ways. I don't want to do that. I know that the people of Strathmore are people that want the best for this community and they want safety for this community. So if this bylaw were to come forward again and we would go through second and third readings, I would hope that we would be able to massage it for a made in Strathmore solution so that it's not a one-size-fits-all, because we're not a one-size-fits-all community. We're one of the few communities that has, Highway 1 going right through it, and that could have somebody from another community come in, not know that they're asymptomatic and spread, but then be gone. And how we need to have all that additional information in order to make this decision. So I'm just going to say that I am not in favor of this amendment, just because I really think we have to be careful about putting in numbers. I know I'm a teacher and I love numbers normally, but not in this instant. I don't think that it should guide us in this.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Sobel, then Councillor Corbio.
I'll move that right over because Councillor Bauer said exactly what I wanted to say, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbio.
Thank you, Worship. I know that a lot of people like certain things, though. They like having tangible goals where they can see yes or no. I understand that it can create limitation or certain things would enable it. But if we could have limitations or exceptions within it, I don't know, it might help. I personally like tangible things. It's a known. It's not something that's scary, and it could be, is today the day that nobody would know until it's set. So I actually do like the tangible goals. I know it would be a little bit more work to have exceptions, if it was a contained or da-da-da-da-da, but I like the idea.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand where you're talking about thresholds, and I appreciate all of that. I think where I support Jason's motion is more, when do we get out of it? Because that is the question that we are going to be asked by the public constantly. When is the out? When does this part stop? When do we get to have normal? And So I have a really hard time with something that we're going to implement where there's no way of anyone knowing when it's going to end. That I struggle with that.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I don't think we do know that. That's an unknown. So that's why I would propose, we have said around this room many times that our emergency management team has the full confidence and support of this council. And so, to me, the best way forward would be, as a part of this bylaw, to say that our emergency management would make the decision to trigger second and third reading, and they would make the decision when to deactivate it. And if they've done what they've done to date, and this and I love hearing what you said about, if there's an outbreak at the school, we trust the school is going to handle it. I've been working in the school the last week and listening to young men like my friend Ty, who said today, we don't like living in COVID, but we wear masks 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, every day except when we're out for recess and unless we're sitting beside our friends, and then we wear them all the time. And you know what? It's okay. And another young man who said to me, I made a pact. One of my parents is a healthcare provider, and we made a pact that when they're at work in their healthcare environment every day, that they'll work every minute of every day thinking about how to protect me. And when I go to school, my part of that pact is to work really hard every day to make sure that I protect my family. If children can wear masks for 7 hours a day, so much of this is just, on you. and I believe in that so much. I believe that, Wheatland Housing has gone to such extraordinary lengths to protect their people, but they know the risks, and they are well equipped to manage them, and they know how to do that, and would work with you. It wouldn't necessarily trigger a community response. Same with the schools. Schools across Alberta are dealing with this, and I'm proud of how they're dealing with it. And working inside the schools like I have been since they've opened, it's just humbling to see how well they're doing and how well the parents at home are coping with homeschooling. And so I trust you. I don't see why we wouldn't move on that environment. Like, if we really believe what we said, that we trusted our emergency management processes, they've kept us so safe. When disaster services in Alberta say that you've done such a magnificent job, we have confidence in you to move forward. To me, that would be the natural amendment. That would be the in. And as Councillor Cox pointed out, it would also be the out. I just think it's a no-brainer. And one of the other things that this would do, Joni McNeely said when she addressed us the other night, Dr. Joni McNeely said, educate. So once you have a reading on the table where people have a known, then you can start to educate. And we have the people to do that, to bring forward the information that's rational and logical. She said, educate, then motivate. Motivate people to do what they can, to do what Councillor Montgomery suggested, which is, to do the responsible thing when you need to. And she said, and then as a last resort, legislate. I really believe in that, and I think that if we move forward this way, we can do those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we heard enough as far as making a decision on the motion being presented by Councillor Montgomery to direct administration to come back with a potential threshold number? Then I guess I will call the question. All in favor of Councillor Montgomery's motion? Opposed? And the motion is defeated 4-3. Are there any, Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, would it be worthwhile then to move that motion? And I just ask it from administration. Is it wise to do it now, or is it better to wait? Like, I would be prepared to move the following: that emergency management have the responsibility to enact bylaw 20-21, section 3.1, upon need, and I need better wording, and to also deactivate the bylaw when they deem it appropriate. I don't know how to do that, but no, you can't do it now? I don't know.
Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you still have a motion on the floor to give this bylaw first reading as amended.
No, we did. We did pass it.
I thought we passed it,
No, we did. I thought we did.
Okay,
but then I might have passed a kidney stone too.
okay. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Peterson, the motion I think you should make is that your ECC recommend to council when to proceed with second and third reading, period.
Councillor Bauer.
Your Worship, I would like to present a motion of my own that admin look at ways of involving in public consultation or inviting this public to speak before this bylaw is enacted.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Bauer as far as public engagement. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Sobel?
Well, I'm just a little unclear as to what that means. And I don't want to tie the chief's or our hands, because if it takes a couple of weeks to get this all organized, or 10 days, or a week, whatever, I don't know what admin would do, and we run into a situation where we have to enact this, if a sufficient consultation hasn't taken place, then we can't enact it. So I'm just a little worried about that last couple of words.
So, a lot of, if I may, Your Worship, respond back to Councillor Sobel. A lot of the discussion that I've been hearing in the last little while has said when we enact, this is just first reading, and we still have to get through second and third. And I'm almost hearing that this bylaw is going to go through. And I don't know if the people of Strathmore want their choice to be taken away. And so I want us to have an opportunity for people to come to this council chambers, or us go to the Civic Center, or us to have some type of public consultation to make sure that this is going to be because the public has not seen this draft of this bylaw yet. And I think that there are still amendments that could be made. Our CAO has just said that it could have multiple amendments to it. I don't know right now if it is completely made in Strathmore. And I would want to get the public's consultation to make sure that it is. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not opposed to the consultation process. I'm just opposed to the timeline that you've set.
Before the bylaw is enacted.
Exactly.
It has to be, because otherwise.
But it's possible it couldn't be. I mean, if something happens in the next few days, and what is the definition of public consultation? I'm not sure exactly what that means, but all I'm saying is, I think it's a good idea for administration to prepare a plan in regards to public consultation. But I think there has to be a little bit of wiggle room there to allow them to do that on their own time as well. I mean, you can even add as quick as possible, but once you add those two words, then you're stopping this bylaw from going any further, unless sufficient consultation is done. It's just the point. Anyway.
I would defer to my fellow council members and ask you, how would I be able to massage this amendment so that the public is consulted? We don't know whether or not you're right, Councillor Sobel. We could get to that threshold, or we could get to that point where the ECC is saying and suggesting to us that we're there. But from what I've heard, it could be an isolated case. We could, get there in a variety of different ways. What I'd like to do is just encourage the public to be able to feel that they have the opportunity to come forward, because this is affecting them and it's affecting their right.
Councillor Bauer, what about a motion where we would direct administration to seek out and find ways to engage the public, like through surveys and things like you said with SurveyMonkey. What if the motion was to direct administration to solicit public input and public dialogue concerning a potential mask bylaw? Would that be sufficient?
This first reading, like they could refer to it. They would have this to refer to.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, the first reading would be there for them to look at because it would be posted. And then we would find ways, or administration would find ways to solicit public input on first reading as well as other things associated with that. Would that be enough to satisfy the concept of getting the public involved more?
Yes.
Okay, so would you be prepared to make a motion then to direct administration to solicit or to engage the public now that first reading has been achieved?
I move that administration look into ways of engaging the public in consultation of the first reading of bylaw 20-21 face covering bylaw.
Thank you for that motion. Any discussion on Councillor Brower's motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you for that, Councillor Brower, and thank you for allowing me to jump in and give you a suggestion. So do we have anything else with that bylaw now?
I think I would just wait for second reading to make that suggestion that Councillor, or that CEO would work with. The one on having the ECC make the decisions about enacting.
Oh, okay, sure. I think I understand that,
Because
yeah.
it can become part of the conversation under Councillor Bauer's.
Sure. Gotcha. Thank you. So we're done with that one. And I think the public will be reassured and probably relieved that it's just a bylaw pending. Nothing's happening at this time, and they will have opportunities to give their opinions through the administration methods that they do to survey the public then. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you.
You got that look.
I just have a question relative to Councillor Bauer's motion, and that is, since I've asked for a version to come back that is amended but different, can we get consultation done on both versions, please?
You mean legal consultation?
No, I mean like consulting the public, because there's going to be the version that, compels everybody versus the version that only compels people where businesses are asking people.
What we'll do, through you, Mr. Mayor, is we'll look at ways of communicating what's on the floor for further amendments.
Okay.
Because we can't say it has been amended yet, but we'll tell them that there's further items that are going to be debated as follows, and then you can present opinions on them.
That'd be great, thank you.
What?
What he wants to do.
No, you go ahead.
That's your baby.
I never want to do
That's your baby.
Verily, okay. All right, I will move we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you. Grudgingly, thank you. We have a motion on the floor to extend the meeting to as late as 10:30 PM tonight. All in favor? And the motion is carried. So that brings us to urgent business. Do we have any urgent business tonight? I don't believe we do. And that brings me to item 14, questions between councilors and/or council statements. I'm 14.1, and I just want to, this is an awkward point for me, but we've discussed this, so. And for the public, Councillor Corbeil and I have discussed this, so it's not a surprise to her. I would never do anything that would blindside her. But there have been rumors and things that have come to me as mayor that have stated or have opinions that Councillor Corbeil is no longer a full-time resident of Strathmore. Rumors are circulating regarding this, and I feel that in the proper spirit of transparency, Councillor Corbeil should have the opportunity to speak to this issue. There have been rumors and comments, so that these have been going on behind her back, that Councillor Corbeil's children are no longer in school in Strathmore, and that they are registered for hockey in Drumheller. So my only question to you, Councillor Corbeil, is, are you a full-time resident of Strathmore?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, my permanent residency is Strathmore. I'm not going to hide the fact that my house is for sale. I have answered many questions on numerous occasions sitting here. I am only going to say that I am a full-time resident of Strathmore and that my family arrangements are, I'm not willing to discuss them in public. If any constituent has an issue, please feel free to approach me. I don't think it needs to be discussed in public.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So if you do have any questions or comments, you can direct them directly to Councillor Corbeil. And we will go on to the next one then. Administrative inquiries.
Your Worship.
Oh, Councillor Bowers, sorry.
I have a few things, actually. First of all, I'd like to just say thank you so much to Deputy Mayor Peterson for representing us at the WID Marigold event, the saw turning event on Friday. I was so pleased that she brought greetings from council and spoke to the partnership that has happened between WID and Marigold, and how in the public's perception, this may have been a very unlikely partnership, but it actually makes sense on so many levels, and she was able to just pull that together so beautifully. So I would just like to say thank you to her. Secondly, today, I don't know if you all know, but we all need a reason to smile. And today, the Tim Hortons Smile Cookie campaign started off. I was at the Edgefield Tim Hortons with members of the SCSS and town staff. I met with Kevin and Tracy Corpy, and who told me again that they are so pleased to be residents of business members of Strathmore community, and that last year they were proud to raise over $11,000 for initiatives that stayed in our community to assist residents in a variety of much-needed areas. 100% of the money received from the cookie campaign stays here in Strathmore. And today I bought 100 cookies, and I delivered boxes to a variety of businesses. I challenged people to buy more cookies, and let's give smiles to people, especially in light of everything that's been happening. We need something to smile about. And I challenge council staff, residents, and businesses to purchase Smile cookies and give to others, please. On another note, I read earlier this month a statement about Overdose Awareness Day. And next week, Trevor Wheel has reached out to me again and asked if on September 22nd, which marks 1 year since we lost a young man here in Strathmore and almost 2 others after overdosing at a local party, Mr. Wheel would like to invite people of our community who have had overdose and drugs affect their families and their community to please come to the south parking lot at Kinsman Park on September 22nd, I'm sorry, that's not a Saturday, at 7 p.m. And I will be there as well as members of the mental health community, law enforcement officials, and other people that are invested in this very important topic in our community. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that, and thank you also for representing us at the Tim Hortons for the Smile Cookie campaign. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to point out, thank you for the smiles. I happen to be one of the businesses, working at one of the businesses that was the recipient of some cookies today, and at lunchtime, I too went to Tim Hortons and bought 3 dozen cookies and delivered them to 3 banks today, so.
Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments, Councillor
I just
Peterson?
had 2 quick comments, Your Worship. Last week, it was my privilege to represent you at the suicide prevention intervention undertaking that was sponsored by Alberta Mental Health and Strathmore and really carried out by Strathmore Family Community Services. So again, great thanks to Linda Bernicki and Lauren McGugan and their team, and to the people of Alberta Mental Health. And in regards to Councillor Bauer's suggestion that this September 22nd event is open, I'd really encourage our communications to contact our Strathmore Wheatland Addictions team. I think they have a big role in that. And same with Alberta Mental Health. They gave a fantastic presentation at the suicide intervention evening, recognizing losses and struggles, and I think that that they would be a great addition as well. And also Siksika. And the reason I say that is that Siksika Council enacted a call to action at their last council meeting. They enacted a call to action regarding suicide prevention. And I think that it's just a great example. I've never seen a municipal council or an Indigenous council do that. And I just think it's a brilliant idea and something that we could follow in regards to both the addictions issue and suicide intervention and prevention. The other thing that Siksika Council did that's worth noting is that they passed a resolution where they have declared September 30th all children matter, and they are doing a walk from the site of the original residential school at Crowfoot, which is just south of Cluny, and they're walking to the residential school at Old Sun, which is south of Gleason. So it's quite an undertaking, but it is a passion for them to recognize the 7 generations of suffering in the residential school. So thank you, Your Worship, and I think that our upcoming meeting with Siksika will bring about even greater fruit from what we're doing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That brings us to item 15, administrative inquiries.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Deborah.
I have an administrative inquiry from Councillor Montgomery concerning municipal enforcement. Question 1 is, what controls does the town have in place to ensure that builders and construction contractors are not allowing garbage and debris to spread beyond the property they are working on, i.e. bin cover mandates, street cleaning protocols? Does Calgary have different, more comprehensive rules for builders? Question 2, what control does the town have over loose garbage that is on private property in a commercial district such as the Ranch Market? Question 3, what is the town of Strathmore policy for the Parks Department related to the garbage that is in the path of the mowers? Question 4, how many littering tickets have been issued this year? Question 5, does municipal enforcement have priority issues that they focus on? If so, what are the top priorities of municipal enforcement? Question 6, can administration please provide a regular report to council on what bylaw tickets have been written throughout the year? Question 7, how many smoking bylaw related tickets have been written so far this year? And I have another administrative inquiry from Councillor Cox regarding the park in Lakewood. During a roundtable discussion, we discussed a park in Hillview. We discussed whether this was monies well spent, and I asked about a park in Lakewood before. Mr. Ryan Roycroft said that this was possible and we could work with developers and possibly loan the money and or complete the park with the expectation of the developer to pay us back. Can you please let me know if this is still possible and what steps come next? And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to Mr. Jim Simpson.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure when I was supposed to bring this up, Your Worship, but through you to council. Today, just a friendly reminder that today was the deadline, I guess you could say, for selecting the top 5 issues for our MVP.
Oh, no. I forgot all about it.
Was it tonight?
Yes, you told us yesterday, too.
Yes,
I sent you
yes, you did. So we have till midnight tonight?
Tomorrow, listen, tomorrow would be fine.
Tomorrow is...
Tomorrow's
Well, I'll do it tonight when I get home.
You and me.
bad, Jim.
We're bad.
Is it just the 2 of us?
I think it's just the 2 of us.
Sorry, I will do it as soon as I get home. Sorry, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, and hopefully that brings us to a motion for adjournment. Councillor Montgomery.
I got it. I will move that we, I'm just joking. I'll move we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn at 9:49 by Councillor Montgomery. All in favor?